As soon as she gets set up.
Pardon? Yeah. I would have brought some. Cold in here. Did we get another
Ready?
proposal?
Pledge of allegiance, please.
Why don't you welcome everybody? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome and thanks to all for attending.
Michael, a little closer.
Present we have Kathy Devlin and Tim Patricus, Board of Selectmen, Mike Marinaccio, our Chief Financial Officer, and Logan, our town clerk. Carl Andolino, our town attorney, will join us in about 30 minutes. And the registrars of voters, Dave McCafferty, moderators of the election, Karen Hawking, Lucille Fury, Judy Mell, and Helene Orifice. Before we address the first item on tonight's agenda, which is the revised results of the November 6th election, we will invite limited audience comments after we hear from the election moderators and the discussion of the explanatory text from questions 6 and 7 on the ballot from the town clerk. I'd now like for Karen Hawking, head moderator, to address the corrected voting results that were outlined in November 13th letter to the Board of Selectmen, which I will now read for the record. This statement is to inform the town of Somers of 3 clerical errors which occurred during the calculation of the election results for November the 6th. These errors occurred in the results for questions number 1, number 6, and the Attorney General's position. These numbers were submitted by a nonpartisan moderator and assistant registrars at 1:30 a.m. on Wednesday morning, after individuals had been working at the polls since 5 a.m. on Tuesday. These numbers were calculated and submitted with integrity and in good faith by individuals of multiple parties, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican, 1 Independent. On Wednesday, the Secretary of State asked for a detailed breakdown of all yes and no questions to be submitted by 4 p.m. on Friday. To assistant registrars of different parties, we checked all the result totals. Due to the wet ballots jamming tabulator number 1, 2 tabulators were used for the election, resulting in 2 tapes needing to be added for the results. At this time, a clerical error was discovered for question number 1. It was determined that the absentee ballot count was included twice in the total. The original number was yes votes 3,402, no votes 529. The new totals were yes votes 3,402 and no votes 501. The count for the Attorney General's position for Susan Hatfield increased from 2,660 to 2,671. Neither of these corrections impacted the outcome. A clerical error was also discovered for the yes vote for question number 6. Question number 6 was originally calculated as yes votes 1,289, no votes 1,669. The new total was determined to be 2,456 yes votes. The no votes remained unchanged at 1,669. The clerical error occurred when the yes votes from 1 tape were inadvertently added to the blank ballot count from the second tape. At this point, the assistant registrars notified the registrar of voters that there was a discrepancy. The new numbers were submitted to the Secretary of State, and the town clerk was notified. Due to the town hall hours and the holiday, the moderator, the assistant registrars, the registrar of voters, and the town clerk notified the first selectman of the clerical errors at the opening of the business on Tuesday, November 13th. Respectfully submitted by Karen Hawking, the moderator, Lucille Fury, assistant registrar, Judy Mell, assistant registrar, and Eileen Orifice, assistant registrar. Do any of the moderators or David McCaffrey want to make comments or clarification?
That statement is correct.
Okay. The next item is the explanatory text for clarifying questions number 6 and number 7 on the ballot, since there was confusion as to the meaning and the intent. Discussions took place with the town clerk, our town attorney, selected members of the Charter Revision Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the Secretary of State's office, and all concurred with the explanatory text that were written and were in compliance with state statutes number 9-369B. These changes were subsequently approved at the October 18th, 2018 Board of Selectmen meeting, which was live streamed and the minutes posted. I will now read for the record these explanatory texts that were published on the town website before the election, and copies were provided at the entrance to the voting booths and taped to the front doors. These physical copies were provided just in case citizens did not have the opportunity to visit the website before voting. Question number 6 read, shall the town remain guided by an elected Board of Selectmen with an appointed Chief Administrative Officer reporting to the Board of Selectmen? The explanatory text, which I indicated was on the town website and posted outside the election booth here. Under the current charter, the first selectman is the chief executive and administrative officer in the town. The proposal would create a new position called the chief administrative officer, appointed or removed by the Board of Selectmen. The majority of the day-to-day first selectman's duties would be transferred to the chief administrative officer. The Board of Selectmen will maintain policy development, hiring and firing, and more importantly, financial oversight. Question number 7 read, shall the town charter be amended to remove the provision for the election of a first selectman and a Board of Selectmen, and in its place provide for the biennial election of a 3-member Board of Selectmen, each serving a 2-year term, who shall select the chair from amongst themselves? The explanatory text read, this proposed amendment is made in conjunction with question number 6. Under the current charter, the Board of Selectmen consists of an elected first selectman and 2 other selectmen. The proposal eliminates the election of a separate first selectman. The Board of Selectmen, consisting of 3 individuals, would be elected and would choose amongst themselves a chairman. The chairman would act as the head of the board. The proposed change would become effective at the end of the current elected term. I'll now like for Ann Logan to provide additional background regarding these explanatory texts. Ann?
Well, just to confirm with what Mr. Norris stated, the Board of Selectmen did, at a meeting on October 18th, voted to have the town's attorney and myself develop explanatory text based on the questions on the ballot. We went back and forth. We wanted to make it as clear as possible. We went through, I think it was almost 4 different drafts of this. It was presented to the Board of Selectmen. They reviewed it and they approved it. It was available at the town clerk's office on a daily basis. We posted it. We actually posted it on our website, on Facebook. We also, anybody and everybody who came in for an absentee ballot, we provided that explanatory text. We encouraged everybody to take a copy of each and every document we had available for the election this time. And even people coming into the office, conducting other business, we encouraged them to take all the information we had available.
Thank you, Ann. As indicated, we will now invite a limited audience comments. And I've asked Tim Patrikas to be the moderator and to set the ground rules for the audience comments. Tim?
Do we need a motion and vote to open for public comment? Do we need a motion and vote for public comment in this case, Ann?
It is at the discretion of the Board of Selectmen to entertain, and I would.
All right, so
Make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we open the floor for public comments specifically related to the topic of questions 6 and 7, and then I'll explain that after we get a second.
I second that.
Aye.
All
Aye.
in
All in
favor?
favor? Aye.
Aye.
So we're a little bit limited, folks. This isn't a town meeting. It's not a public hearing. It's a Board of Selectmen business meeting. It's also a special meeting because the snowstorm that hit last Thursday precludes us from adding an agenda item to the agenda that's here. So, looking at the comments from the community that we have access to, it was clear that folks wanted to speak and let us know what their thoughts and concerns are regarding the charter change that is coming subsequent to this question 6. We moved the time to 7 o'clock because we heard that some people find it difficult to get here at 6. We moved to this larger room in hopes that people could come here, be comfortable, and feel comfortable speaking. So I'm going to ask for no hair pulling, no name calling, no swearing, no hitting, that kind of thing. Try to be respectful. We're going to ask people to approach the microphone at the front of the room. Just give us your name and your address. Unfortunately, it's not a place where we can do dialogue. We're not able to do a question and answer session. So you can ask questions we won't be able to answer, but we'll certainly take notes and we'll try to do our best to get back to everybody. So with that said, I'll take hands from the floor and call people up as we can. Any comments? The back of the room, come on up.
I have a question concerning...
Sir, would you state your name?
David Marty, I live at 50 Springfield Road.
Okay.
I have a question concerning the explanatory text. And how long was that posted on the website prior to the election?
As soon as it was approved by the Board of Selectmen,
Okay.
I think the town's attorney and I went back and forth for approximately 4 or 5 hours, going back and forth, and as soon as we had it available, we presented it, they approved it at their meeting.
And then my next question is, why is there even need for explanatory text if the question is phrased correctly up front?
No, it's common practice, as you saw with constitutional amendments. Explanatory text is always provided to explain what you are voting for. As with the bonding questions, we had explanatory text also on that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I guess I'd like to add, Ann, that you said David, thank you. I'd like to add that with the whole process, there's a second way we could have approached this. We could have simply asked one question that said, shall the town charter changes as recommended by the Charter Revision Committee and supported by the Board of Selectmen be adopted? We thought that would be a very ambiguous way to ask the question, and that's why we directed the town clerk to give us 3 specific questions. So just for point of record, we wanted to make sure people knew that there were 3 specific topics we were voting on, so thanks for that. Other questions, comments? Mr. Keeney.
I'm sorry that your town attorney's not here because I think he would be helpful to explain a few things. From my perspective, and I think I read pretty clearly and understand pretty clearly when I read language, but to me the language was misleading and not helpful with someone trying to understand what they were voting for with regards to amendment, what's it called, the...
Question 6.
Question 6 and 7.
Question 6, right.
A point of clarification, Tim, were you talking about the questions on the ballot themselves or the explanatory text? Or
I'm
both?
talking about the question on the ballot.
Thank you.
And I would say that the great majority of people voting do not read the explanatory text, nor should they be held accountable to read the explanatory text. I think the language itself should be understood when it's read as to what you're talking about. In this case, I think the language is misreading, and it's not clerical error, I think it's substantive error. And also, I think that whoever is put in that position under these circumstances, there is an appearance of illegitimacy with regards to that position, because I don't think the public knew what they were voting on. Thank you.
Thank you, Board. Appreciate you taking the time to allow the public comment. I'm Ed Swicky, 17 Long Hill Drive, Somers, Connecticut. Just wanted to kind of address the whole problem with the wording not being clear. I know that there has been a number of people from the Charter Revision Committee that has actually approached the Board to clarify the actual question, to add in that this is a newly created position, and apparently that was pushed back not to use that, and there was a number of excuses that it was the Secretary of State office or elections that wouldn't allow that, and that's not true. And a couple other things, if you look at the validity of the question, say you took this as an exam, and you wanted to make sure you validate the question. Well, they do that statistically. What I mean statistically is number 6 and number 7 are directly tied to each other, meaning that you need to make a charter revision in order to have this position. As it is, 7 didn't get voted in, so that means there's no change in the charter. So now you have a first selectman. That first selectman still has executive duties, and that first selectman still gets paid, is paid. And you can't change that without a charter revision. What I mean statistically is there should be a direct correlation, meaning that their numbers should reflect each other, and they do not reflect each other. There is no direct correlation between 6 and 7, so it isn't a valid question. There's some confusion with people. I had a number of people that walked up and wanted some clarification, and when I told them it was a new position, they were just blown away because they were very confused.
You should stay till the attorney's here.
Yeah.
That's okay, we could restate it, I'd be more than glad to do that. The other thing I wanted to point out was that there was an informal poll that was actually done on Somers Politics, which is a diverse group of people. There is Democrat, Republicans, Independent, undecideds, and basically that poll, out of 811 people that are on that list, there was 135 people that answered a question that voted no, and 1 person that voted yes. And that should give you some kind of statistical correlation of looking at an informal poll saying that people didn't understand this question. And you mentioned that you were going to get back to people. I wrote you guys a letter last week, never had a response. If you get a response back, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Yep, you. 3 on the aisle. Sorry, I don't know everybody by name yet.
That's all right, no problem. My name is Joan Sizer. I live at 50 Whisper Woods in Somers. I'm of the same sentiment as Tim Keeney is, and I know a lot of other people in town are as well. Yes, explanatory information was provided, but not everybody in town has the internet. Certainly, we know not everybody reads what's on the town website. You'd like to hope they would. I happen to be one who tries to, but that's irrelevant. The bottom line is the actual wording of the question on the ballot says, shall the town remain guided by, notice the word remain, guided by a 3-member board of selectmen with a chief administrative officer. The fact that the word remain is in that sentence, to me, and I would think to a lot of other people as well, means that we already have the chief administrative officer, and we don't. Therefore, in my opinion, I think the question on the ballot should have been reworded to indicate that the chief administrative officer position was a new position, not just in the explanatory information, but in the actual question. Without that, it's misleading, and I don't think it's proper. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dan Madden, 25 Turnpike Road. First of all, I consider myself to try to get as much information as I can. I try to be enlightened on what's going on. I was aware of the question by comments in the previous, other things on Facebook and whatnot that were out there. If the question was worded with the explanatory text that was given, and it was a longer sentence, I think it would have been a lot clearer to a lot of people, even if it was a long-winded question, because I myself had to explain to a couple people that voted by absentee ballot that didn't understand the question, and they didn't understand what the meaning of it actually meant, just like the past comments that, were brought up. And I also agree with Mr. Sawicki that the fact that you have two questions that are tied to each other, that are separate questions, is also a difficult thing to pursue. It doesn't explain and it doesn't justify the means of the questions. But with that said, I just feel that wording on question 6 was not good enough for the voters to understand, because a lot of voters just are not informed as well as they should be. Right or wrong, people don't get the information. It can be posted in front of their face, but they may not look at it until they actually have a ballot in their hands. And I think it's required to be on the ballot to be that long of an explanation for a change that important. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Bob Chester, and I'm at 19 Mance Hill. First I want to thank the board for not putting a question on the ballot that merely said, do you approve what the Charter Revision Committee approved? I'm grateful that the question had more meat to it. But and I hear the thing about the explanation. What was approved and appeared on the question was not difficult. You could easily frame a question to communicate to voter what you were asking of them. What were you asking them to vote yes or no on? It wasn't a complicated thing. We're adding a chief administrative officer. It could be phrased really easy, directly, so that they know that you're changing the form of government. You're adding this position, and you're voting yes. The way the question was phrased, and someone had pointed out, saying remain, the person reads it, you're beginning the sentence saying, you're going to remain a 3-board member group of selectmen as your body, and you're with this chief administrative officer, and you're inclined to think that it's an existing form of government. So there's several people that I know that weren't Facebook people, that weren't people who were informed, they're doing their lives, that voted yes, and they come back to me and they say, well, it said remain. You're going to remain, whatever the structure is, whatever the government is, it's going to remain. So I'm voting yes because, most people don't like change. So, they resist it, but they like status quo. So they voted yes, thinking they're keeping status quo and they're not changing the government. All I'm saying is, again, I'm grateful that you didn't merely put a question on the ballot that said, do you approve what the Charter Revision Committee approved? I'm glad you gave more detail, but we could have done a lot better. And it's not just that it's, I see a lot overseeing insurance. I see a lot of misleading and deceptive stuff in contracts. It's insurance, right? This question is a doozy, and the misleading nature of it is a doozy. I'm going to, be clear, and it's troubling and it's disappointing. But what's most disappointing is the shots that we had to correct it, and we chose not to correct it. I don't know why. Abstinence, uncertainty, Secretary of State, but we had opportunities. The town clerk initially wrote it. She's acknowledged that. The some oversight by the town attorney initially, and then there was something that occurred in the Secretary of State. where the needed to add a new party. So there's this opportunity to redraft the ballot. So we have this second shot at it, and people had seen the preliminary draft of the ballot, the first draft of it, and there was discussion. People said, question 6, it should be changed, it's misleading, it's deceptive. Let's get it right. So now, I guess it didn't go to the Board of Selectmen initially, but now more people are involved, more eyes are on it, and there was a change to question 6. But that change didn't correct the problem with the question. So that's what I find most troubling. And that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. I got you next.
David Penny, 214 Maple. Again, I underscore our appreciation for the board allowing some public input on this question. Clearly, it's a topic that has a lot of folks concerned, and Bob and the others have laid out many of the points that underscore some of those concerns. And but indeed, the election happened. The count is what the count is, and without the town attorney, we're still, at least one person shy of a full discussion on what your options are. My hope would be that, given the significance of the impact of the yes or no on this question, the creation of a new position, the modification of responsibilities, given the amount of concern within the community as to whether we had a real valid enumeration of folks' sentiment in regard to this proposed change, that with the creative help of the town attorney, that any option to come back and revisit this would seem to be in the best interest of taking this process forward in a manner that arrives at an outcome that folks can get behind.
Thank you, David.
Yep.
Barbara Capuano, 687 Hall Hill. I've always had absolute respect for the board and every committee in this town. Everybody works hard. But when the new vote came out, my phone lit up. I could have lit 100 Christmas trees with my phone that day. It seems that a lot of people are confused. I called and got the website, went on the website, read them, and was still confused. And I did not know. I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know for sure which way I was supposed to vote. If that was confusing to me, it was other people too that read the information. Since it's so controversial, since there was a recount, I mean, I can't even tell you how many people have sat there and said things like, if there's a recount on one side of the paper because it was jamming the machine, why wasn't it on the other side of the paper too? It was the same wet paper. But I can't answer those. What I would recommend is to revisit this in the May election. There's nothing pending that says we have to do it right now, and put it back on the ballot and make sure everybody understands how to vote. If you're voting this way, it means you're getting the town manager. If you vote this way, you're not getting one. Thank you.
Thank you. And to just to clarify, do you want to speak to that?
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah.
David McCaffrey.
Dave, could you step to the microphone for everybody's benefit? Thanks.
Hi, Dave McCaffrey, Registrar of Voters. I just needed to clarify that there was no actual formal recount. There was actually just a request from the Secretary of State's office requesting clarification of the exact number of votes between the machine tally, absentee, and same-day registration on all of the questions. And so that was the purpose of counting again. It was not a formal recount. No formal request for a formal recount was made. Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Dave. Bill?
Ralph Williams, 42 Springfield Road. I was the vice chairman of the Charter Revision Commission. First of all, guys, I told you so. At our last meeting of the Charter Commission, I told you that the questions, what became questions 6 and 7, should be one question because it was an organic component. That being said, first of all, on the question of the number of votes counted, I'm surprised some light bulbs didn't go off on election night, because I actually went back afterwards and counted the number of votes cast, yeas and nays, for every ballot question and for every question on the second page of the ballot, which is where question 6 was. It was 1,200 votes below any others. It was 1,200 votes below the vote for registrar of voters, which frankly doesn't count. Someone should have noticed that. The wording of the question, I wish it had said that it was a newly created position. On the other hand, largely thanks to Bob Chester, who was incidentally one of my colleagues on the Charter Commission, we had some very interesting and good and productive byplay in the course of the time. Largely thanks to him and the other opponents of what appeared on the ballot, I don't think there was any question, unless of course you were both blind and failed to drive in this town. The opponents made it abundantly clear that if you wanted absolutely no change in town government, you had to vote no on questions 5 and question 6 and question 7. Question 6 nevertheless passed, and it passed handily. And maybe Bob's heard from somebody. I've yet to hear one person who said, as I said, I agree the wording stunk. That being said, I've yet to hear one person say, I didn't know I was voting for that. I think, thanks to the byplay, whether it was on social media or on the 5.5-foot signs at every major intersection in town, people knew that that question was a change for an administrative position. And even if you tell me one person got it wrong, please don't insult the electorate of this town by telling us that 2,400 of us can't read. I think people knew what they voted for, and it passed. As I say, bring it all back. I would have happily had a question that made it more specific, that it was a new position. I would also have had the two questions combined, so that either it went up or down on its merits. As it is, we're keeping it first Board of Selectmen. We're going to have an administrative position. I think that's the position where you have to move on from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Andy?
Thanks. Andy Rocket, 20 Blue Ridge Mountain. I was chair of the commission in question. And before I speak, I want to make sure I have a clear exit to the door and nobody's blocking it.
There's one up here that I'm getting is Andy.
Oh, yeah, all right, good. And so I've been involved in enough of my share of embarrassing mistakes in life to not be concerned about the embarrassing mistake we as a town made with the voting. That stuff happens when you get good people involved. We make mistakes. And when they discovered the mistake, they were forthright and honest and open about that. So that happens, and I'm totally understanding of that. I'm just thankful it's not me that was involved. But they did the best they could. With respect to the vote, the commission's discussions, as those on the commission president will agree, they were pretty passionate at times as well as the post-election discussions. And while I wouldn't say, in my opinion, the wording was horribly written, I think it could have been better, but I think it was good enough. And if you play it out, I think it would be worse precedent to take a very controversial issue and a passionate issue and say, okay, it's a passionate group whose vote didn't win, so let's re-vote. I think that would set a far worse precedent. There are other mechanisms in place for the townspeople to pursue additional charter revision changes in the future, and I'd encourage that as compared to a re-vote. So I would not support any kind of re-vote on this issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Hi. Susan Peck, 91 Sky Ridge Drive. I knew exactly what I was voting no for. What I'd like to talk about on question 6, and it involves question 7 too. On question 6, there is no time frame of when we would hire a new chief administrative officer. On question 7, the chairman would act as the head of the board. The proposed change will come effective at the end of the current elected term. Now, even though we voted no on question 7, we said when we were going to do it. On question 6, we didn't. Unfortunately, if this goes through, we are now going to have, just so everybody knows, a first selectman that makes $90,000 a year, and a chief administrative officer that is going to make well more than $125,000 a year. Thank you.
Tim, I see I'm just going to wait until everyone else has a first turn up. Thanks.
I'm Mike Bouchard, 118 Rosehaven Road. I don't think there's any question that question 6 was flawed. Hopefully it wasn't on purpose, but the question, it remains that it was flawed. And I know you people up here, I'm sure, I hope you want to know what the people in town really want. And because of the wording of that question, I don't think you know what the people really wanted. So I think really it needs to be thrown out. The vote needs to be thrown out. I don't know if that's how that's done. And it needs to be, there has to be another vote on it at the next election, which will be with the budget, I guess. You can have a referendum there. In the meantime, don't take any action, don't hire anybody, don't get any contracts until we know what the people of this town really want, and which I think that's what you want. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yes. By the way, before you start, I just wanted to introduce, for those who don't know, this is Carl Andolini. He's our town attorney. Thank you, Carl, for coming. Go ahead.
Jim Formica, I'm from 48 Franklin Woods Drive. I just want to focus on Bob's comment about change. So incumbents tend to win in elections more often than not. And I think an exercise, people like Andy who think the question was written well enough, you should ask yourself to go outside of Summers. I work with a diverse group of people all throughout the country, lawyers, not lawyers. I conducted an exercise. I said, listen to this question 5. And I said, what do you think this means? Does this mean change? And they said, oh, absolutely. If you vote yes for this, you're voting for change. I said, listen to question 6. Does this ask for change? They said, no. If you vote yes, you're asking for the status quo. So if the question's written that well and there's signs around town and everything. My wife doesn't read it. The only reason my wife knew to vote no was because I told her to vote no. And Bob knew to vote no. She doesn't pay attention to the signs. She doesn't read the town website. And I'd say that's probably more people than not. This is a small crowd for our town. You know, there's 11,000 people or so that live in this town. These are concerned citizens. But the layperson, the person who's not so concerned, you know, just go outside your circle and ask people outside of Summers, someone from Maryland, someone from Virginia, what does this mean to you? And I guarantee you they'll say, status quo, first question 6.
Thank you. So there are some hands up from people who would like to speak a second time. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak first before we go to the seconds? In row. Come on up, Jimmy.
Jimmy Radwitz, Golf Road, Summers. I understood what I was voting for. I'm a senior citizen. But if you go up to Woodcrest and some of these older people who are older than I am, I talked to a lot of them, they had no idea what they were voting for. Not a clue. So I think that the wording in 6 was very, very misleading. I knew what it was because I attended other meetings and everything was going on, you know. Now you guys got yourself in a dilemma. 7 didn't pass, 6 did. How do you handle it?
Mike?
My name is Mike Parker. I live at 41 Mans Hill Road. Thanks for the opportunity to speak about this. I believe that the question was poorly framed. The word remain sets off and sets the tone that we're not going to abide change. The confusion with 6 and 7 only exacerbates the problem, makes it worse. I know that probably this is not the right thing for me to say, but I want to be candid about it. As a member of the Board of Finance, if you asked me today to vote to fund this position, I would vote no. And I would vote to make sure that no funds were transferred to fund the position. Because I think the real sentiment in the town is that people just didn't understand what they were voting for. And so I'd like to go on record at least as saying that I'm only one of 6 on the Board of Finance, but you can rest assured that my position on that is going to remain fairly clear. I will not permit, if I had my way, the funding of the position until the vote is clarified. And if the citizens want to support it, let them do so on a clear, well-stated vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Come on up, Tim.
Tim Keeney, 57 Maple Street. I think you've heard from a lot of people tonight that the language was truly misleading. Sorry to disagree with you, Ralph, but I know there are hundreds of people in town that didn't know what they were voting for there, or thought they were voting for something else that they weren't voting for. The big question, I think, is future courses of action as to what is now possible. So I think we do have a vote that, as far as the Secretary of State is concerned, was a legitimate vote, and we're left with the results. As far as possible future courses of action, I believe that, and the town attorney can correct this, but I believe that if 15% or more of the electorate were to sign a petition directing the Board of Selectmen to appoint a new charter revision commission, and that was done in a timely fashion, we could have another vote next year where everybody understands what they're voting for. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan, right?
Yes.
I'll get it. Thanks.
Joan Sizer again.
You in the third row.
Yeah, me in the third row. I think it was Mike Boucher, I'm not sure, but I think it was Mike who mentioned about resubmitting the question to the town residents. I would hate to see the reputation of any of you tarred and marred as a result of this vote. There's people out there who think deception and misrepresentation, this kind of thing, and I don't honestly think that that was your intent, but I hate to have people believe that, because we've come a long way over the last years. As such, I would propose that, as I think it was Mike who said, not to take any action as a result of the answer being approved for question 6. Do not seek out a candidate, etc., and do whatever you have to do as far as a charter committee or whatever, and come up with new, clear, specific wording for question 6, whether you combine 7 with it or whatever, but that clearly states that question 6 means the 3-member Board of Selectmen plus an additional new position, and then have that voted on whenever the appropriate time would be, whether it be next May with the budget or what have you. But to take action on this right now, I honestly think not only is it going to be a big financial expense and time-consuming, to go through the process of finding somebody, etc., but I think it's going to do harm to the relationship of the town residents and the Board of Selectmen and the Charter Commission, and I would hate to see that happen. So I urge you to consider no action, rewrite, and then revote. Thank you.
Ralph Williams, 42 Springfield Road. Just a couple of points by clarification. First of all, our proposal always was that the first selectman's salary would go, well, first of all, it was what they came up with was no first selectman. That was not the commission's, but we humored it. But we never proposed that remain funded at the level it is now.
Ralph, if you could just direct your comments.
Sure.
I don't want to make it one-on-one with the president.
That's fine, that's perfect.
Thanks.
The proposal always was that the first selectman would become either minimally compensated or not compensated at all, because the administrative responsibilities would be transferred to someone else. It would no longer be a 40-hour plus a week job. So that was one point I wanted to make. Secondly, the commission's proposal, although it was not reflected on the ballot, was for this to take effect after the 2019 election. Finally, the question of a revote. There is specific statutory language for creating and approving charter changes. As it was when our commission began deliberations in April, once we finally had it fully constituted, it was beat the clock to be able to get it to the November ballot. The commission has to hold 2 hearings, the selectmen have to hold hearings, there are timelines that have to be gone through. And only then can it go on the ballot. This was not done by whimsy. And it can only be approved by an affirmative vote of 15% of the town's total electorate. Those of you who are thinking about May, we didn't get a 15% turnout for the budget referendum last year. We just about have to do these for the general election if they're going to be done at all. I have no problem with any of this. I just want people to understand that this is something you snap your fingers and you wish and you have a revote. That's all.
Thank you, Ralph. So, in the interest of people's time, I'll take 2 or 3 more questions on this topic, and then if somebody has something unique to say, we'll take it. But ma'am, come on down.
Joan Brevard, Maple Ridge, 74 Maple Ridge Drive. I'd like I believe a clarification of a couple of the statements I heard tonight, and ask you, and maybe Carl would have the best answer, because is it possible, first of all, I know you can get a petition to have something withdrawn. Is it possible for the board, in their own say-so, to withdraw the results of this question and send it back to the people to work on? I don't know if that's a possibility that you could do that with us, a petition having to be created. And I guess you can't answer me, but it's
I mean, then why would we not be able to turn over any vote that comes in, right? That would be such a bad precedent.
It's my question,
so,
that's the question for you.
I would think not.
So you couldn't take care of it, it would have to be a petition, is that, I assume that's correct?
I just don't think that any board in any government should turn over a vote that came back, whether it was well written, badly written, passed or failed. But you can't just reject a vote because we don't like. Even if the whole community agreed we didn't like it, I don't think you can just say no to a vote. Yeah.
I'll reserve my comments until
Okay.
everyone's spoken.
So I'll let Carl
get all
answer.
the questions
Thanks.
out at once. But I'm going to address that, Joan.
Okay.
I will address that.
Good to turn it over to Carl at this point. I think I will.
Okay. I'm going to stand up because I prefer. Everyone can hear me, right? I have a pretty loud voice. I generally don't need a microphone. Good evening. I'm Carl Landolina, Fahey Landolina. I've been representing the town for 28 years or so now. I did have hair back when I started. And I don't know what you discussed prior to my arrival. I apologize. I was in another meeting in Enfield before I could come here. But I'll start with Joan's question because it was the first one that I heard, essentially. This was done at a general election, and the vote has to stand. There's no way to overturn the vote by ignoring it or having the Board of Selectmen say, all right, we're going to ignore the results, we're going to have a new vote. That can't be done. This is like, you couldn't do that for any election. So that can't be done.
I'm going to ask you to use this because we can't pick it up on the video.
Oh, okay.
So.
All right. So, to answer your question, Joan, no, it can't be done in that manner. All right. Now, since this was done under it was done as part of a charter revision process that Ralph said started, I guess, in April. The commission was formed, given a charge, and they looked at a number of things. and then there was a presentation of 3 questions based upon the recommendations from the Charter Revision Committee and the Board of Selectmen. And I understand the issue with respect to question 6. I get it. There was explanatory text. Some people read it, some people probably didn't. So I've done a lot of charters in a lot of towns, and sometimes we just ask one question, and that question is, shall the charter be revised as recommended by the Board of Selectmen? So that it's incumbent upon everybody to kind of understand what's entailed when that's done. I'm not saying that was the case here, that wasn't done. It was a specific question asking for a specific result, a yes or no vote on this Chief Administrative Officer. So, but in any event, so since the results have been certified by town officials, election officials, and passed on to the Secretary of State, they are official results of the election, just like you voted for state rep and anything else you voted on November 6th. So they are official results. Now, having said that, whenever there is a major change in a charter, it usually takes at least one election cycle before it goes into effect. All right? So had, for instance, question 7 also been adopted, that wouldn't go into effect today, wouldn't go into effect until November of 2019. So by voting no on question 7, and let's say voting yes on question 6, officially as that's the result, essentially you've allowed this new position to be created, but until it's funded, it doesn't really exist. And you know, most of you know how that works. The only way to fund it is for a line item to be placed in the budget for July of 2019-20 budget to fund the salary for this new administrative officer. So I guess if it's funded in July, it could be staffed sometime thereafter. Of course, you've got this other little quirky language in your charter that says the salary of the first selectman shall not be diminished during his term of office, which means until the current first selectman, to this next term, which is up 2 weeks after the November election 2019, the current first selectman must be paid the same amount of money that's in the budget this year. You're not allowed to reduce that salary. So, in order for this position to be funded and staffed, let's say for July, the earliest you could do it, unless you're going to talk the Board of Finance into transferring money from your general fund, and that would take a vote of the town meeting because I assume it would be in excess of $20,000 to staff this position. You can't make a transfer out of your general fund or from your contingency fund or transfer from one line item to another in excess of $20,000 without having a town meeting. So the voters would get to say, if somebody said, well, let's create this position tomorrow, and we need $80,000 to fund it to the end of the fiscal year, or $60,000, they'd have to ask the Board of Finance to sign off. Let's assume they say yes. We heard Mike say he would say no. But let's assume the others agree. It would be put before the voters. And they would have the money wouldn't be there to staff this position without you agreeing to do that at a town meeting called specifically for that purpose. So that gets us to July. After July, in order to keep the first selectman's salary the way it is now, through November, you'd have to fund that, and then on top of that, you'd have to fund this new position. You know, I'm willing to guess how people would vote on that question if it came up in the July budget. All right? So, if the position is going to be funded and staffed, in my view, I don't see how it's a practical matter. It can be done before November of 2019, the year out. All right? Which, again, is not unusual for charter changes to take a year. Sometimes they take 2 years before they go into effect. All right? So I heard a lot of people say, please don't staff the position. Essentially, from my point of view, that would be up to you whether they staff the position. Because ultimately, they're going to need your permission to either move money or create a new line item and fund it in the budget. So it's going to be worked out in that process. If they were to propose that this take effect in November of 2019, they would have to fund the first selectman's salary for July August, September, October at full pay, and then reduce that pay to something you found acceptable, and then fund the administrative position for the next 8 months of that fiscal year. Now, the other thing I would say, by voting no on question 7, the first selectman remains the chief administrative officer in this town. None of the duties and obligations, the role of the first selectman, have not been passed to this new position, chief administrative officer. All right? That hasn't happened. And it won't happen because the people voted not to allow that to happen by voting no on question number 7. So all you did was, in effect, create a new position which can't be funded or staffed until at least July, and probably, as a practical matter, not until October. So that's my take on it. You would have to say, in my view, as to whether, because you're not going to get anyone to work for free, all right? You got to put the money in the budget for it, and you're going to have the ability to look at the budget in July and see what's proposed in terms of staffing this position or not staffing the position. All right? So someone else asked about the charter. So the charter statute is, for the most part, pretty clear. There are some sections that are not very clear. And there are 2 ways to talk about starting a charter commission. The one that was done last April, Board of Selectmen voted, needs a 2/3 vote by the members of the board to say we want a charter revision commission to look at certain issues. They formed the commission, and they went through the process, and now we're here. There's also, and anyone can take, look at it. If you want the statute, look it up. It's 7-191. You can read it for yourself. It also says that the citizens can petition for a charter revision committee by filing a petition that contains no less than, it's actually 10%. So you need, I don't know how many voters you have in this town.
6,000.
Let's say 6,000. So it require, and this is not just for this issue, but any issue, you could demand that first the Board of Selectmen initiate the process of looking at the charter for a specific or any number of specific questions, and the charter revision process would be ramped up again, and it would be then, commission would be reformed, would go through the process, and then the question would then be put before the electorate at either another general election, which the next one is a year from now, November, sorry? Yeah, I don't know exactly, but 2019. Or there can be a special referendum called for that purpose. But as the judge said, there's a quorum requirement in the statute for questions on charters that aren't put before the voters at a general election. So if you don't do it in November, you want to get this done in your budget referendum, which I think is in May sometime, you need to have the question approved by a number that is no less than 15% of the votes. So if we're going to use the 6,000 number, you would need, if my math is correct, I went to Windsor Locks High, so I'm a little shaky sometimes, 900, right? 900. So you need 900 people to come out at your budget referendum to vote yes, or whatever, let's say the question was, shall we retain the position of chief administrative officer? Let's say that's the question. All right? You need 900 people to vote yes. Well, yeah, you want people, actually in that case you want people to vote no. So the majority would be, let's say you voted no, you need 900 people to vote no or return it. So it's not 15% have to show up, it's 15% have to vote either in favor or against the question. So that's why, generally speaking, these kinds of changes are done at a general election because there's no quorum requirement. If 3 people show up in a general election, whoever gets 2 votes wins. All right? And that would be the same for this kind of a question. But, again, that would be up to, I guess, the folks in charge to decide, A, is there going to be a charter commission formed? B, is the question going to be looked at in May, or is it going to be looked at in November of 2019? all right? And Ralph was correct that even though you form a charter revision commission to look at one question, once you hand it off to them, they can do whatever they want. They have free reign, all right? And so you can't really dictate to how long you can ask them to present their findings back on a date certain in the future, but to get this on the ballot or as part of the referendum in May, I'm not saying it can't be done, but it would be a little tight in my view. You know, it would be hard to do it, but, you know, assuming that whoever was on this new commission didn't veer off into other issues with the charter.
Thanks, Carl.
So, I got one more thing to say. All right?
Just giving you the hook a little early.
The hook? Okay, I guess I'm done.
Oh, you're not.
No,
You're not.
continue on. Go ahead.
No, so, no, I guess I was going to talk about another section of the charter, but we need to do that, so. But the basic, that's the process, so that's what would have to be done. There's no way to undo it, all right? He doesn't wear a black robe anymore. He was a probate judge, he couldn't have done it there. I don't, even though I wear black a lot, I'm not wearing black. So I don't have the ability to say, well, I agree with you, or let's do this over again. I don't have the ability to do that. None of these folks do, so that's what we're left with. Okay? All right, thanks.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Carl. And I'd like to say thanks on behalf of the board to the moderators and everybody who had a hand in making the election successful. I know it was a lot of work, a lot of late hours with all the issues that we had with the ballot, so thank you very much for all your work and your hard work in helping us work through this, so thank you. Folks, stick around. We got a lot more fun stuff to talk about, probably another half hour. We are going to be talking about next year's Board of Selectmen meeting schedule. I'd like you to stick around for that because what we find out is that the decisions that we're making, after we make them, you folks all have opinions on what we were talking about. We'd love it if you could come to the meetings and let us know your opinion before we make decisions, because we're trying to decide things based on the information at hand. So if you just stick around for another 15, 20 minutes, get an idea of when we'll be meeting next year. We'd love to have turnout of 5 or 6 people at each meeting so that the discussions that we're having get out in public so we can get a better sense of what the community wants from us. One thing we've done in that regard, just a quick little commercial, should have seen this in your mailbox this year. It's a quarterly publication, no charge to the town. Kim is taking care of this for us out of the operations manager, and there's advertisers in the business that are paying to get this done for us. We're just trying to communicate a little better. So stick around. We've probably got another 20 minutes or so of meeting going, right? Oh, this is live streaming also. Anything else I should let them know? Be nice? Okay. So it's live stream. If you can't make it to the meeting, be sure to watch us online. So, but next item, let's go.
Do you need me?
Do we need Carl?
No, we're done, Carl.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thanks, Carl. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is the proposed holiday schedule.
Proposed holiday schedule. Go ahead.
Do you have this?
Okay, I'm going to turn this on in case people want to hear us.
Is my packet?
I don't have it.
Okay.
She can send it.
All right. It's pretty much what it was last year. I'll go through this.
I don't know how this works. Okay.
Proposed holiday schedule, New Year's Day,
I'm not sure.
January 1st.
I'll make a motion that we accept the proposed holiday schedule as proposed by Kim LaFleur with 9 holidays. Is that how many there are there? I don't know. 12 holidays as proposed.
Second.
Second. Favor, aye?
Aye.
Next one is the proposed 2019 referendum schedule.
How's this going here? Ann's going to do it. I just want to make sure people can hear us since they're sticking around, Ann.
My husband.
You're right.
I do now.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
The next item is the 2019 referendum schedule. Board of Finance public hearing in Town Hall, April 23rd.
Right close to the button. on, and let's just gotta get closer.
The next item on the agenda is the 2019 referendum schedule. Board of Public Hearing, Town Hall, April 23rd, 2019. Annual Town Meeting in Town Hall, May 7th, 2019.
Can you say it again, please?
Board of Public Hearing, Town Hall, April 23rd. Annual Town Meeting, Town Hall, May the 7th. The referendum in Town Hall, May 14th.
That's a change, Judy, because we usually go to the high school for the hearing.
Yeah.
So it's going to be here this time at the town hall. I'm sorry?
You go to the elementary school.
I'm sorry. We go to the elementary school, but this time we'll be here.
Make a motion.
I move to approve the referendum schedule for this year's budget.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item is the proposed Board of Selectmen's meeting schedule. You have a copy of that there.
Yeah, for the purposes of discussion, I'll make a motion that we accept as presented.
Do you want
Second?
Now we do discussion.
All in favor?
No, discussion.
All right, discussion.
So we have a first, second. So I'd like to suggest we make a change to this, that if we could make it the first and third Thursday of each month, instead of every other week, it'll be easier to put on calendars, especially if I've got some travel coming up with work. It'd be easier for me to schedule if we always did the first Thursday and third Thursday of every month.
I think it's better for the public, too.
I would hope it would be better for the public. I'm seeing some heads nod. So first and third Thursday of every month would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah, are you
So
voting for that?
I'm going to,
Well, we can't, we just
I'll
have
amend,
to knock this one
I'm going to
down.
amend my motion that we make a motion to approve a schedule of first and third Thursday of every month beginning on January 3rd, 2019.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
As Todd's here for the staffing Department of Public Works plow drivers.
I have a request to staff 2 open positions. These are part-time seasonal on-call plow operators. These are non-CDL operators. We've been advertising for 6 weeks. We had a few candidates, not many.
You promised me it wasn't going to snow this year.
I lied. The 2 we're recommending, I've got copies for everybody.
I have a copy.
I have something on my computer I've already read from you.
There's 2 different letters for
Oh.
2 different individuals.
Yep.
You'll have 2. There you go.
No, this,
All right, Todd.
Okay, these are for pickup routes, actually. These are non-CDL pickup truck drivers, on-call seasonal, just when it snows and snows enough. First one is Anthony Gregano, to fill one of the open positions. Anthony has a heavy equipment background. He's also a welder, and we think he'd be a good fit. He's available at any time. He's laid off for the winter. Lives in Stafford, about 5 miles away, so within reasonable traveling distance. Second one is Jason Lafayette. He lives in town. He also has a lot of construction background as well as landscape construction or landscape company background. Again, this would be for a pickup truck route, seasonal on-call, just when we need them when it snows.
I move to accept the recommendations for the part-time seasonal plow operators as recommended by Todd Rowland.
Second.
Any discussion?
Presuming they're all the pre-employment testing.
Yes, once approved, they'll go and get fingerprinted and background checked by the police department.
Okay.
As everyone does.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, motion
All in
passes.
favor?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye. Boards and
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
But boards and commissions?
Yeah.
I have a motion I'd like to make under that.
Okay.
We have an opening on senior advisory, and I would like to make a motion to appoint Steve Getman as the to go into the senior advisory council.
Does Steve know you're suggesting this?
He wants to do it.
That's great. I'll second that, Kathy.
Yeah,
That's great.
No problem. All in
Thank you.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Steve's not here to defend himself.
But I know he
Hopefully he's
wants
watching
to do this.
online. Hey, my phone's ringing.
Trust me.
That'll be a nice addition, that's great.
Yeah, I received a letter from Rick Cheney. Please see the email below from Michelle Young, sending her resignation from the Economic Development Commission. Please note I reached out to her in the spring to welcome her, let her know where and when we can meet. She does make any good point concerning the onboarding process, which we should give additional considerations to going forward. However, in this case, she has never made any of the meetings, and obviously has a busy agenda, like all of us. Please don't hesitate to contact me should you have any questions. So we have a vacancy on the EDC.
Right, but we have to move to approve her resignation first.
Right.
I move to approve the resignation of Michelle Young from EDC.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll send her a letter acknowledging the resignation.
How many slots do we have open on EDC now?
Well, we have 2 openings, because didn't Rick Rotaco retire? He moved out of town, so
Yes.
he had to leave. So we need to be looking for 2 people to go on Economic Development Commission.
Any suggestions?
Andy and Ralph are talking over there, want to grab that?
Maybe Ralph would like to go on there.
Ralph would love to go on the board, whatever one it is.
All in favor? Aye.
Although, no, just to save you a little.
You guys already put down his DBA in his year.
All right, so
Okay.
we've got 2, and we're sure of that.
I don't think we've,
I know Kim was gonna try to reach out to Rick Cheney. Pam Belisle is an alternative, oh my God.
Alternate.
To the EDC, and she's been coming to all of the meetings, and hopefully he would recommend
I
her
got
to
her on
be
there as an
placed as
alternate.
a full
Okay.
member of the committee.
Great.
I think she's been on that.
2 vacancies as alternates.
We have 2 vacancies as alternates?
Well, if Pam goes up to a full member.
Oh, she's an alternate now.
She is currently an alternate.
She's really, she went on there, I know I made her go on, but I'm glad she's going to every meeting.
Pam's been a very,
All right, so can we do that, move her up, or do we
Well,
have
I
to
guess
ask
Rick
her?
was
Rick-
gonna
Rick
reach
has
out
to make
her
the change.
confirm that she wanted
Oh,
to.
okay.
Okay. Any other
Very
suggestions?
good. No, not right now. I think that I do have a list of people for economic development, though.
Okay,
I
we'll
don't
table
remember
that
who
until
they
we
are.
hear from Rick.
Okay.
Thank you. Last item is the authorization of scheduled payments.
That hasn't changed since Thursday, right?
No.
Okay.
It's easy to read this time. Move to approve payments in the amount of $269,811.33.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I like getting them on ahead of time to read.
Yeah, you need agendas.
Oh, these are the minutes?
Minutes.
Okay.
That's not on the agenda, we can't vote on it. It's a special meeting.
Here, special meeting, can't vote on.
Oh, we can't vote on these?
Nope.
Not on the agenda.
Okay.
When it says special meeting, if it's not on the
All
agenda,
right,
we can't
motion
do it.
for, motion to
Move to adjourn.
adjourn, yeah,
All
that's
in
the word.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Everybody went home.
Thanks, everyone.
Mike, here's the,
Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Could you and Tim just come to my office and sign the bonding documents that I have?
that's the
Yes.
one.
I'm opposed.
Those are the ones I already signed this morning.
Those are the ones you signed, you're all set. I gotta get the stuff off.
Do you
to the
mind
attorney.
if, are we going upstairs?
What's that?
Are we going upstairs?
Yeah.
I'm gonna raise them before I hit yours.
No, that's not
I'll
a
wait
problem,
for you
take
to
your
drive
time.
you home.